The strangest thing about real heroes? The old dispatcher once said. Most of them are standing quietly in the corner while louder people take credit. Rain hammered against the massive glass windows of Vanguard Response Headquarters, turning downtown Chicago into a blur of red brake lights and silver reflections. Inside the emergency training facility, everything smelled like polished steel, fresh paint, and expensive decisions. Rows of elite rescue specialists stood in matching black tactical jackets near the simulation bay, their boots spotless, their posture sharp enough to belong in a recruitment commercial. At the far end of the room, Marcus Hale quietly emptied out his locker. No one had officially fired him yet. That almost made it worse. 42 years old. 20 years in urban fire rescue. 12 years training emergency response teams across 3 states. And somehow, none of it seemed to matter under the bright corporate lights hanging above the facility floor. He folded an old navy sweatshirt carefully and placed it into a worn duffel bag beside a framed crayon drawing from his daughter. The paper was bent at the corners. Smoke smudges stained one side. "Best dad ever," was written across the top in purple marker. The automatic doors opened behind him with a soft hydraulic hiss. Evelyn Carter walked in without rushing, heels tapping against concrete with calm authority. White coat. Dark blonde hair tied back neatly. Phone vibrating every few seconds in her hand. The room straightened almost instinctively around her. People didn't relax near Evelyn Carter. They performed. "Starting today," she announced, her voice smooth and controlled. "Vanguard Response is transitioning to a modernized international rescue model." Several screens behind her flickered alive, displaying logos, certifications, European rescue footage, thermal imaging systems worth more than most people's homes. "Our old methods," she continued, "cannot keep up with modern disaster environments." Marcus zipped his bag slowly. No anger. No reaction. Just the sound of old metal teeth closing together. One rookie firefighter near the lockers shifted awkwardly before asking, "So who trained the new elite unit?" Marcus glanced toward the rain sliding down the windows. Then he gave the smallest shrug. "Good people," he said quietly. Across the room, one of the imported rescue consultants suddenly looked over at him. The man's expression changed almost immediately. Not arrogance anymore. Recognition. Respect. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. But Marcus had already picked up his duffel bag and started walking toward the exit while thunder rolled somewhere far above the city skyline. The elevator doors closed behind Marcus with a soft metallic thud, sealing away the noise of Vanguard Response one floor at a time. For a few seconds, he simply stood there holding the old duffel bag at his side while rainwater slid down the glass shaft outside the building. His reflection looked tired tonight. Older than 42. The kind of tired that sleep never really fixed. Upstairs, applause suddenly echoed faintly through the floors above him. The elite rescue unit had begun their welcome presentation. Marcus stared at the glowing floor numbers without expression. Then the elevator stopped at level 3. The doors opened again. 2 young rescue specialists stepped inside wearing black Vanguard jackets with silver European insignias stitched onto the shoulders. They froze the second they saw him. One of them immediately straightened his posture. "Captain Hale," the taller one said quietly. Marcus gave a small nod. "Evening, Tyler." The younger firefighter looked confused. His eyes bounced between Marcus and the polished certifications hanging from the other man's chest. "Wait," he whispered. "You know him?" Tyler almost looked offended by the question. "Know him? He trained half the collapse teams in Illinois." Marcus sighed softly. "That was a long time ago." The elevator continued downward. Silence settled inside the small space. Rain tapped against the outer glass like impatient fingers. Finally, the younger rescuer spoke carefully. "Sir, are you really leaving?" Marcus adjusted the strap on his duffel bag. "Looks that way. But the thermal survival protocols." The young man stopped himself. Marcus glanced over calmly. "Protocols do not save people," he said. "People save people." The doors opened onto the parking level. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet concrete and engine smoke. Marcus stepped out first. Behind him, Tyler hesitated before speaking again. They still teach your staircase rule in Denver. Marcus paused near the row of emergency vehicles. For the first time all evening, something faint crossed his face. Not pride. More like memory. Good, he said quietly. Means fewer firefighters panic and smoke. Upstairs, inside the massive simulation chamber, Evelyn Carter stood before a glowing digital projection of a high-rise evacuation model, while executives circled around her holding tablets and coffee cups. Everything looked expensive. Controlled. Safe. One consultant pointed toward the screen confidently. Our predictive airflow system can now anticipate structural heat movement within 6 inches. Another added, human reaction time is the weakest variable in emergency rescue. Evelyn nodded once. Efficient. Professional. Clean. Then one of the veteran firefighters near the back suddenly asked, if human instinct is the problem, why does everybody still use Marcus Hale's rescue timing charts? The room went still for half a second. Just enough to matter. The silence after that question spread through the simulation chamber like smoke under a closed door. Nobody answered immediately. Not the consultants. Not the executives. Even the giant digital evacuation model glowing across the wall suddenly felt colder somehow. Evelyn Carter slowly turned toward the veteran firefighter standing near the back row. What did you say? She asked. The older firefighter shifted his weight awkwardly. I said everybody still uses Hale's timing charts. One of the consultants gave a quick dismissive laugh. Legacy material, he said smoothly. Useful years ago maybe, but modern rescue systems rely on predictive algorithms now. Another specialist nodded toward the screen confidently. Human instinct creates inconsistency. The veteran firefighter looked unconvinced. Tell that to firefighters trapped on the 43rd floor with no visibility. The room tightened again. Evelyn folded her arms slowly. Enough. Her tone was calm. Controlled. But something small had shifted behind her eyes. Curiosity. She turned toward the lead systems engineer near the simulation controls. Run the model. The engineer nodded immediately. Across the chamber, the high-rise simulation expanded across 3 massive screens. Smoke patterns moved through glowing stairwells while digital rescue teams advanced floor by floor. Heat signatures pulsed red and orange through the structure. At first, everything looked flawless. Timers. Routes. Ventilation predictions. Perfectly optimized movement. Then the simulation reached minute 14. Suddenly warning indicators flashed across the lower floors. Airflow shifted. Visibility collapsed inside the stairwells. 3 rescue units became trapped in the digital model. Impossible, one consultant muttered. The engineer frowned harder while typing rapidly. The thermal spread is accelerating faster than projected. More warning alerts appeared. A staircase route failed. 2 additional rescue teams lost communication inside the simulation. Evelyn stared at the screens carefully. Why? Nobody answered right away. Then a younger rescue specialist near the side wall quietly cleared his throat. Because the building changed pressure after the 4th floor window collapse. Several executives turned toward him. And? Evelyn asked. The young rescuer hesitated before continuing carefully. Marcus Hale taught us old fires do not follow clean math after pressure shifts. The consultant nearest the screen scoffed softly. That is outdated field superstition. The young firefighter shook his head once. No, sir. It is why most of us survived training. That landed harder than anyone expected. Evelyn looked around the room slowly now. Something strange was happening. Every time the simulation failed, people stopped looking at the technology. They started talking about Marcus Hale. Even worse, they talked about him quietly. Like people do when discussing someone they trust more than the system itself. Down in the rain-soaked parking garage, Marcus sat inside his aging pickup truck with the engine off, listening to an old weather report crackle softly through the radio while his daughter's science project rested carefully on the passenger seat beside him. By 8:30 that night, the rain over Chicago had turned heavier, washing the city in silver streaks and blurred reflections. Inside Vanguard Response, the simulation chamber remained lit long after most corporate floors had gone dark. Nobody wanted to admit it, but the failed rescue model had unsettled the room. Evelyn Carter stood alone near the giant digital display with her heels in one hand and a tablet glowing faintly in the other. The polished confidence from earlier had faded into something quieter now. Frustration, maybe. Or doubt. Across the screen, the thermal simulation replayed again for the fourth time. Same collapse point. Same failed airflow prediction. Same trapped rescue teams. Evelyn rubbed her temples slowly. "Run it again," she said. The systems engineer hesitated. "Ma'am, we already adjusted the variables." "Then why does it still fail?" Nobody answered. The silence stretched until someone near the back finally spoke. "Tyler. Because the building breathes differently once people panic." Several executives looked irritated immediately. "That is not measurable," one consultant replied sharply. Tyler kept his eyes on the screen. "Marcus always said smoke follows fear faster than logic." Another uncomfortable silence settled over the room. Evelyn looked toward Tyler carefully now. "You keep quoting him." Tyler nodded once. "Most of us do." Evelyn folded her arms. "Then explain something to me." Her voice stayed calm, but colder this time. "If Marcus Hale is so important, why does nobody outside this building know his name?" Tyler glanced toward the dark windows overlooking the city. "Because he never cared about being known." That answer landed harder than expected. One of the executives gave a skeptical laugh. "Nobody works 20 years without wanting recognition." Tyler looked at him directly. "Sir, Marcus once spent 16 straight hours training volunteer firefighters after his own shift ended." He paused. "Then drove 2 hours home because his daughter had a science fair the next morning." Nobody interrupted him now. "He used to stay after drills cleaning equipment nobody else wanted to touch." Tyler continued quietly. "Not because it was his job. Because he said tired firefighters deserve working gear." Evelyn stared down at the simulation timer glowing red on her tablet. Minute 14. Failure point. Again. Finally she looked up. "Call him." The room blinked collectively. One consultant frowned immediately. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Her voice sharpened slightly. "Call Marcus Hale." "For what purpose?" another executive asked. Evelyn looked back at the failing simulation. "Because every system in this room keeps collapsing at the exact moment everybody starts talking about him." Down across the wet south side streets, Marcus sat beneath the fluorescent lights of a 24-hour diner helping his 12-year-old daughter finish a model volcano for school, while steam curled quietly from a cup of untouched black coffee beside his tired hands. The diner smelled like coffee, syrup, and rain-soaked jackets drying near the heater vents. Outside, headlights dragged across wet streets while distant sirens echoed somewhere deeper in the city. Marcus Hale sat quietly in the corner booth helping his daughter glue tiny paper trees onto a cardboard volcano for her science project. "You made the lava too neat," he said gently. "Real volcanoes are messy." His daughter Maya smiled without looking up. "You say that about everything." Marcus almost smiled back. Almost. The waitress refilled his coffee without asking. She knew him well enough by now. Tuesday nights. Black coffee. No sugar. Always tired eyes. Always polite. His old phone buzzed against the table. Unknown number. Marcus glanced at it once and ignored it. Maya kept painting the volcano carefully. "Dad?" she asked softly. "Did they really let you go?" The question hung heavier than the steam rising from the coffee cup. Marcus leaned back slowly. "They just decided to try something different." Maya frowned immediately. "That usually means somebody made a dumb decision." He let out a quiet laugh through his nose. "You sound older every year." The phone buzzed again. Same number. Marcus finally answered without much interest. Hale speaking. For a second, only static filled the line. Then came a calm professional voice. Mr. Hale, this is Evelyn Carter from Vanguard Response. Maya's eyes lifted immediately. Marcus stayed quiet. Across the diner window, rainwater rolled down the glass in crooked silver lines. I hope I am not interrupting dinner, Evelyn continued. You are. The honesty caught her off guard. A pause followed. Somewhere behind Evelyn's side of the call, keyboards clicked rapidly and distant voices argued softly. Corporate noise. We encountered some issues with the simulation systems tonight, she said carefully. I was hoping you could consult temporarily. Marcus looked down at Maya spreading red paint across the cardboard mountain. You already hired consultants? Yes. Elite ones? Another pause. Yes. Marcus nodded faintly to himself like someone confirming whether he already expected. Then you should probably trust them. Evelyn lowered her voice slightly. Mr. Hale, every person in that room keeps mentioning your name. Marcus stared out into the rainy Chicago streets for several long seconds. Finally he said, That is because firefighters remember who helped them survive. The line went quiet again. Not uncomfortable. Just honest. Evelyn leaned against the glowing simulation table back at Vanguard headquarters. For the first time all evening, her voice lost some of its polished executive edge. Did I make a mistake? Marcus rubbed tired fingers across his forehead. You made a business decision. That is not what I asked. Maya looked up at him carefully now, sensing something changing in his tone. Marcus remained silent for a moment. Then he spoke softly. The problem with modern rescue systems is not technology. Evelyn listened closely. It is that people who have never been trapped inside smoke keep designing exits. Nobody in the command room moved after hearing that. One consultant slowly lowered his tablet. Another stared at the failed simulation model in complete silence. And for the first time since arriving at Vanguard, Evelyn Carter suddenly realized something uncomfortable. The calmest voice in the entire city belonged to the one man she had already pushed out the door. Long after the call ended, Evelyn Carter remained standing beside the glowing simulation table, while the rest of the command room slowly emptied around her. The giant digital building still flickered across the screens in cold shades of red and blue, trapped forever at minute 14. Failure point. Again. Outside the windows, Chicago shimmered beneath the rain like a city trying to hide itself. One by one, executives gathered their coats and tablets before quietly disappearing into elevators. Nobody spoke much anymore. The confidence from earlier had drained out of the room hours ago. Tyler stayed behind near the back wall organizing training reports into neat stacks. Evelyn glanced toward him suddenly. How long did you train under Marcus? Tyler looked up. 3 years. And he never mentioned any of this? Tyler almost smiled at the question. Marcus does not really talk about himself. Evelyn walked slowly toward the darkened observation deck overlooking the simulation floor below. Rescue mannequins still hung suspended from steel cables beneath the training tower. Silent. Frozen. Then tell me something, she said quietly. Tyler hesitated before answering. Like what? Evelyn folded her arms against the cold glass railing. Why does everyone trust him more than the systems we spent millions building? Tyler looked down toward the empty training floor. Because Marcus never trained people to look impressive. He paused. He trained people to come home alive. That sentence stayed with her longer than she expected. Around midnight, Evelyn finally walked alone through the lower archive hallway beneath Vanguard headquarters. The basement smelled faintly of dust, cardboard, and old equipment oil. Motion-activated lights blinked awake overhead one section at a time as she passed rows of forgotten storage shelves. A maintenance clerk pointed toward the back room. Old firefighter training records are down there somewhere. Evelyn stepped into the archive room slowly. Metal shelves towered above her filled with faded binders, retired manuals, cracked helmets, and boxes untouched for years. She brushed dust from one thick training binder near the center shelf. Thermal Collapse Response Protocols. Author, Marcus Hale. Her fingers stopped moving. She pulled the binder open carefully. Inside were handwritten notes in dark blue ink. Not polished corporate language. Field notes. Real ones. If smoke drops too fast, trust your ears before your eyes. People panic quieter than movies show. Children hide near corners because fear makes them smaller. Evelyn turned another page slowly. Every margin carried tiny corrections, survival reminders, and practical advice written by someone who had clearly spent years inside dangerous situations without ever romanticizing them. Then she noticed something else. Tucked inside the back cover was an old photograph. Marcus stood beside a younger rescue unit outside a burned apartment complex nearly 15 years earlier. Covered in soot. Exhausted. Smiling faintly while several young firefighters crowded around him holding coffee cups. Evelyn recognized 3 faces immediately. 2 now led national rescue agencies. 1 taught federal emergency response programs. All of them had trained under Marcus Hale. Yet his own name appeared nowhere on the public Vanguard website. No awards wall. No executive biography. Nothing. Evelyn stared at the photograph for a long time beneath the dim basement lights. Then she noticed something written along the bottom corner in faded marker. A good trainer is invisible once the team survives without him. For the first time in years, Evelyn Carter felt something unfamiliar pressing against all her polished certainty. Not embarrassment exactly. Something heavier. The realization that she had mistaken quietness for insignificance. At 2:17 in the morning, the first emergency alert shattered the quiet across Vanguard headquarters. Red warning lights flashed through the command center while radios erupted with overlapping voices and location data. Somewhere on the west side of Chicago, a 14-story hotel had gone into full evacuation after an electrical fire spread through the upper maintenance levels. Smoke alarms. Trapped guests. Blocked stairwells. The room that had spent all evening debating simulations suddenly became painfully real. Evelyn Carter moved fast now, heels abandoned somewhere behind her office as she crossed the operations floor in dark slacks and a rolled white blouse. Giant city maps glowed across the walls while dispatch channels crackled overhead. "How many people inside?" she asked sharply. "Unknown," a dispatcher replied. "Fire suppression systems partially failed on floors 11 through 14. One consultant stepped forward immediately. "Deploy the elite unit through the east stairwell." Another shook his head. "No, thermal spread is already compromising vertical airflow." Voices collided. Instructions overlapped. Tablets flashed new data every few seconds. Then someone near the radio station spoke quietly. "This is exactly the kind of pressure shift Marcus warned about." The room went still for half a heartbeat before chaos resumed. Outside, rain pounded against the loading bay while rescue vehicles roared awake beneath spinning emergency lights. Tyler grabbed his gear bag fast but stopped suddenly near the transport truck. "Where is Hale?" Nobody answered him. 20 minutes later, downtown traffic glowed red and white beneath the storm as rescue units surrounded the damaged hotel. Smoke curled from several upper maintenance vents into the freezing night air while frightened guests gathered beneath blankets near ambulances and police barriers. The building itself looked strangely calm from the outside. That was what made experienced firefighters nervous. Evelyn stepped out beneath the rain holding a radio against her ear while consultants argued near the command truck over structural scans and airflow projections. "We cannot confirm safe vertical access," one specialist warned. "Then find another route," Evelyn snapped. "There are still guests unaccounted for." Nearby, Tyler stared upward toward the dark upper floors with growing unease. "Something is wrong," he muttered. "The smoke is moving too slowly." One consultant frowned impatiently. "That makes no sense." Tyler looked at him directly. "Exactly." Suddenly another rescue worker ran toward the command area holding fresh building plans soaked by rainwater. "Maintenance corridors connect behind the elevator shafts," he shouted. But the maps do not match current renovations. Confusion spread instantly across the team. Routes changed. Orders shifted again. Too many variables. Too many voices. Evelyn felt it now. Not fear exactly. Instability. The kind Marcus had warned about on the phone. People designing exits from too far away. Then through the storm and flashing lights, an old dark pickup truck rolled slowly past the outer barricades before stopping beside the equipment trailers. Tyler saw it first. So did several firefighters nearby. The reactions were immediate. Backs straightened. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Marcus Hale stepped out wearing an old navy jacket beneath the rain with a duffel bag slung quietly over one shoulder. No dramatic entrance. No urgency in his movements. Just calm. The kind built from years of surviving hard nights. Evelyn turned toward him from across the command line. Rain dripped from her hair as the city lights flickered behind them. Marcus looked once at the upper floors of the hotel. Then at the confused rescue teams clustered around glowing digital maps. Finally, he spoke the same way someone comments on incoming weather. Your smoke pattern is lying to you. Rain hammered against the sides of the command trucks while emergency lights painted the wet pavement red and blue beneath the Chicago skyline. Smoke drifted unevenly from the upper hotel floors now, curling low one moment before disappearing completely the next. Marcus Hale stood near the barricade studying the building with the same quiet focus other people use for prayer. No panic. No performance. Just observation. Evelyn Carter stepped toward him through the rain, her white blouse damp beneath a borrowed emergency jacket. What do you mean the smoke pattern is lying? Marcus kept his eyes on the hotel windows. The fire is pulling oxygen from somewhere hidden. One consultant frowned immediately. That is impossible. The ventilation system already collapsed. Marcus shook his head once. Not fully. He pointed toward the north maintenance side of the structure. See the fourth floor windows? Several team members turned. Rainwater streaked down the glass while faint smoke pulsed outward in uneven waves. Marcus spoke quietly. Smoke should be pushing hard from those openings. Tyler understood first. But it is breathing inward. Marcus nodded. Which means the fire found another draft source. He finally looked toward Evelyn. Your maps are wrong. Nobody argued this time. The tone around him had already changed. Rescue specialists who had spent hours debating digital projections now listened without interruption. One firefighter quickly unfolded revised building diagrams across the hood of a command vehicle while rain soaked the paper edges. Marcus pointed calmly through the layout. Old service corridors behind the elevator shafts. Those were sealed during renovation. A consultant replied automatically. Marcus glanced at him. Cheap contractors do not seal entire systems. They cover them. Silence. Then Tyler suddenly cursed under his breath. That is why the heat readings never matched the smoke movement. Marcus picked up a radio. How many guests still unaccounted for? 7. Dispatch answered immediately. Including 2 children possibly on 12. Marcus closed his eyes briefly like someone organizing years of instinct into a straight line. Then he handed the radio back. We enter through the maintenance corridor. One consultant hesitated. That route is unstable. Marcus looked at him calmly. Every route is unstable. Another pause. The difference is this one still breathes. Around them, firefighters began moving almost automatically now. Equipment shifted. Oxygen tanks locked into place. Radios changed channels. Nobody formally handed Marcus command. They simply followed him the way exhausted people follow certainty during storms. Evelyn watched it happen in real time. No speeches. No authority games. Just trust earned years before she ever arrived. Marcus tightened the straps on an older rescue jacket, while Tyler approached carrying an extra helmet. You kept it? Tyler asked quietly. Marcus shrugged. Still fits. Nearby, several elite rescue specialists stood waiting without realizing they had unconsciously formed around him in a half circle. Like students around a teacher they respected too deeply to interrupt. Evelyn stepped closer. Marcus. He looked at her finally. Rainwater rolled down both their jackets while distant sirens echoed through downtown streets. If this goes wrong, she started softly. Marcus shook his head before she could finish. People are scared inside that building. His voice stayed steady. That matters more right now. Then he turned toward the dark service entrance beneath the hotel with the rescue team falling in behind him one by one. And standing there beneath the storm and flashing lights, Evelyn Carter realized something that no simulation had managed to teach her. Real leadership did not arrive loudly. Sometimes it walked quietly through the rain carrying an old helmet and years of invisible sacrifice. By dawn, the rain had finally started to ease over Chicago. Emergency lights still flickered across the wet streets outside the hotel, but the panic from earlier had faded into exhausted relief. Paramedics moved quietly between ambulances while soaked firefighters leaned against rescue trucks drinking burnt coffee from paper cups. The city sounded different after a long night like this. Softer somehow. Marcus Hales sat alone on the rear step of an engine truck with his rescue jacket hanging open and his helmet resting beside his boots. His hands looked tired. Not shaking. Just tired in the way hands become after carrying responsibility for too many years. Steam curled from a fresh cup of black coffee balanced beside him. Nearby, several younger firefighters spoke in low voices while watching him from a respectful distance. Not one of them sounded surprised anymore. To them, this was simply Marcus being Marcus. Calm inside chaos. Tyler approached first and handed him a folded thermal blanket. You should warm up. Marcus accepted it with a small nod. Everybody make it out. Tyler smiled faintly. All 7. Marcus lowered his eyes for a second after hearing that. Relief passed quietly across his face before disappearing again beneath exhaustion. Across the loading area, Evelyn Carter stepped out from the command vehicle holding another cup of coffee in both hands. She looked different now. Still polished. Still composed. But something guarded inside her had softened during the night. She walked toward Marcus slowly while sunrise spread pale gold light through the remaining smoke above the city rooftops. Marcus noticed her approaching but said nothing. Evelyn stopped beside him for a moment before holding out the coffee. You were right, she said quietly. Marcus accepted the cup carefully. Warmth rose into the cold morning air between them. About what? He asked. Evelyn looked toward the hotel where rescue teams were packing equipment into trucks. Experience. Her voice stayed calm, but honest. I built an entire company around efficiency. She paused briefly. And somehow forgot that wisdom does not always wear a suit. Marcus let out the faintest breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Almost. People forget things when they spend too much time above ground. Evelyn glanced toward him. Why did you come back tonight? Marcus stared out at the waking city for several seconds before answering. Because somebody was waiting for help. Simple. No speech. No bitterness. Just truth. The silence that followed felt strangely peaceful beneath the fading sirens. Evelyn looked down at the old helmet beside his boots. Scratched. Worn. Useful. Like the man himself. I replaced the wrong person, she admitted softly. Marcus shook his head once while wrapping both hands around the coffee cup. No, he said gently. You just trusted people who looked impressive instead of people who stayed when things got hard. That landed somewhere deep inside her. The morning wind carried the smell of rain, diesel fuel, and distant lake air through the quiet street while firefighters loaded the final equipment cases into the trucks. And sitting there beneath the pale Chicago sunrise, Evelyn Carter finally understood something Marcus Hale had known all along. The strongest people in a crisis are usually the ones who never needed attention in the first place.